Alec, and I'm going to introduce Neil.
Hey.
So, thanks for having us. We've been enjoying checking out this meeting, and so just real quick, Neil's the co-chair for our service committee, and I'm sure he'll get into, if you don't know what ICCPA is and all that, what I would say as far as I think the important things with Neil's story and with Neil's recovery is service is a really big part of his sobriety, and it's been like that pretty much from the beginning. And he does a lot of service work. He works with a lot of newcomers, and he also has a really insatiable lust for AA history. Well, pretty much any history, but AA history is pretty a big part of one of his obsessions. So it's pretty cool. So I'm going to turn it over to Neil.
My name's Neil D. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Neil.
Hey, Neil.
And my sobriety date is March 30th of 1998. I have a home group. My home group's name is Rebellion Dogs. It's young people's men's meeting. And so one of the things that's exciting for me and my home group is that we do the same chanting. If you've never been to a YPOC conference, they do this crazy kind of chanting during the opening readings. It gets people involved, and like it's something I've always enjoyed. So like I definitely feel some pressure here because we've got the gamut of sobriety. Like one day, like welcome, I'm so glad you're here. Like we all had a first day. Some of us had a first day a couple times, and it doesn't matter. It's okay. As long as we're here, that's the important thing. One of the great things that I've experienced in Alcoholics Anonymous is in many times, and I'm not saying this goes across the board, but especially with YPOS, the lack of judgment. So like no matter what, always show up. So my very first drink, and so like I've always loved YPA, young people's meetings, bunch of different reasons why. Clearly I'm not a young person anymore, but I did get sober. My sobriety date was, I got sober when I was 26. My first drink, I was 9. And so like when you start drinking at 9 years old, there is no social drinking at 9 years old. It's all sneaking, hiding, stealing, manipulating. That's something that I just missed, that whole social drinking aspect of drinking. But what did happen for me is like I fell in love with alcohol. Like I knew at 9 years old when I got drunk that first time, that I wanted this the rest of my life. And the people that I drank with, like at 9 years old, right? They didn't experience the same thing. So that's one of the ways that I can tell that I'm different than other drinkers. I'm different than non-alcoholic drinkers. And if there's anything that I can ever come away with, is the doctor's opinion in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I learned so much from that, and I got to tell you, like I didn't read that right away. I've never been much of a reader. I've never been much of a studier. Like studying was for other people, not me. Grew up with some learning disabilities, dyslexia, a bunch of different things. Went to the special classes. And so for the longest time, I couldn't even talk about that because I was afraid what people would think. I also have ADHD, just in case nobody picks up on that. So like if I'm all over the place, like I'm sorry, you guys only have to visit it for like 15, 20 minutes. Like this is the way my head is all the time. So just bear with me. So being in that learning disability class, I always felt like I wasn't a part of, like I didn't belong, like I didn't fit in. Another piece to that is my grandparents raised me. So while I'm going to school and everybody else has their parents, my dad and mom got divorced when I was like 4 or 5 years old, right in that 4.5 years old. And my grandparents were given the responsibility of raising me, and they did absolutely the best job. But that always seemed to be different for me. And I mentioned these things like my being raised by my grandparents, being in the learning disability class, not feeling like I fit in. Like those things don't make me an alcoholic. Like the situations in my life didn't make me an alcoholic. I am different, physically and mentally different than non-alcoholics. I have this condition that when I put alcohol in my body, something happens, and it doesn't always happen with the first drink for me. Like that's one of the things that I struggled with early on when people talked about the first drink gets you drunk. Like there was plenty of times, and I would count them, like, and hold on to them as really important things. Like I could drink 1 or 2 beers and not end up drunk for 3 days. And I had cases of that, and I would point to that, like, that's different. See, I'm not an alcoholic because of that. At some point in time, I ended up getting to a drug and alcohol counselor, and he said to me, he's like, well, drink 1 beer every day for the next 30 days. And if you can do that, maybe you're not an alcoholic. And I was like, well, that's BS, because on day 31, I'm getting drunk because I can't not at some point in time. And this is something I've figured out. Sooner or later, I have to get drunk. Like, and that ties in with that when they talk about it in the big book about being able to control and enjoy, right? So when I was controlling it, I wasn't enjoying it. And when I was enjoying it, I was completely out of control. And so that's difficult when you're like 10 years old. So I held on. I made it through school. I knew I wasn't going to college because I just wasn't. I told myself I wasn't smart enough to go to college. So I joined the Army. It's really all I ever wanted to do. While I was in the Army, my drinking just took off even more. It seemed to be just the normal thing. I actually was stationed in Germany, Baumholder, Germany. Welcome, Germany. And I was in America. I would have been too young to drink in the bars, but in Germany and on base, I could. And so that was like the main focus. Whenever I was not in the field, I was drinking. And some other things that went on with me is so like if I wasn't drunk, I was obsessing about drinking. Like I was thinking about it. Like I couldn't wait until the next time I could. And it just consumed my life. Fast forward. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot we have a translator. I'm probably talking too fast. So one of the important things about my sobriety and being sober in AA, and thank you for my introduction. That's a weird thing for me. Like when they said that we were supposed to have somebody introduce us, I was like, it's not like I'm a star or anything. Service has been like such an important part of my sobriety. Being involved in AA, and my present sponsor, he told this story about penguins. If you've never heard the story, and you'll not find this in any of the AA literature, so this is non-AA approved. But what penguins do is when there's a killer whale in the water, they all get on the iceberg, right? And so they stand on there for a while until they don't see the killer whale anymore. And then what they do is they start wobbling back and forth. And what happens is the iceberg starts to tilt back and forth and wobble around until one of them falls into the water. And so, and I don't know if this is true. I don't know if penguins actually do this, but it's my sponsor's story. So if it's not true, he's a liar. I can give you his contact information if you like. So if the penguin doesn't come back up, they know that there's killer whales still in the water. But if he does, it's safe. But the safest place, and I say all that to say, the safest place is right in the middle of that iceberg. If you're right in the center of Alcoholics Anonymous, it's a lot harder to slip off the edges. And so I encourage anybody and everybody to get involved the best you can in AA. I've been part of this joining this online meeting for I've been like a couple weeks, I think, and I first seen some of you guys on Christmas Eve Alcathon, and I thought what a great thing this is. When I got sober, I was on AOL chat, like dial-up, and it was absolutely horrible. I still get PTSD from hearing that phone going. But anyways, so Pennsylvania bid for ICYPA. Like I said it earlier, if you've never been to an international conference of young people in AA, do your best at some point to get to one. I was involved in our state conference, PennsyPA, a long time ago, and then was on the advisory board for that, which is a great opportunity to be involved in service and be tied into AA. My wife also mentioned, she's my wife, by the way, that announced me. Yeah, we met in AA. They always said, if you hear something you like at a meeting, take it home. And so yeah, it's one of the AA promises. No, it's not. I just made that up. That's a lie. It's not AA promise. Yeah, anyway, so I'll just keep moving before I get too embarrassed. Working with other alcoholics, I sponsor some guys, which is just a great opportunity for me to stay involved and learn. Because not only do I learn about another person, but I get to learn about me and being in this process. My sponsor said, as we're sitting, I also want to throw out there that being sober isn't always like my most favorite thing to do. I'm not one of the people in AA that's like, oh, the sun's always shining. It's just great. It's wonderful. Like, there's struggles and there's stuff that goes on in life. Just has nothing to do with being alcoholic. It's just stuff that people go through. But so I've seen some periods in my life when there's been some really, really great ups and some really bad downs. And like right around that 5-year mark, I struggled with sobriety. I struggled with behaviors and attitudes, and a lot of that stuff that I learned about on my 4th and 5th step, and then I talk about in my 6th and 7th step, and then I do something about it in my 9 through 12. But what I missed during that period of my life was that 10, 11, and 12. And so that's when I got a new sponsor. I had gotten my first sponsor. He got me very involved in service. I was 26, like I said. He ended up firing me because I wasn't doing what he told me to do. It broke my heart. I got a new sponsor, and it was just this great old guy that just wanted to see me do well, but I never really listened to him much either. So at 4.5 years, I got a new sponsor, and he said, I hope you're asking me to sponsor you because you want to work the steps, not because you want to be my friend. And believe it or not, that was such a relief because like I had always tried to be liked or disliked. Like it couldn't be both for me. Like it was either I was going to make you dislike me, or I was going to make you like me. And that's all about, power and control from my end. But when he said, like, he didn't care about how I felt, it was like, oh, okay. So we read through the book line by line, and we talked about it. And sometimes we would get like a whole paragraph done, and sometimes we'd get like a page. And it was this great opportunity for me to learn about the big book and the 12 steps of AA. Roberto, you're gonna have to tell me to stop talking when my time's up, because I forgot to set my clock, so I have no idea how long I've even been talking. And so when he took me through the steps, it gave me this new experience. And one of the things he said was, recovery begins when one alcoholic reaches out his hand to another. And he told me that you could argue this, and I knew what that meant by then. It was for me not to argue with him and just listen to what he had to say. You could argue that it's great that you're not drinking, but your recovery, Neil, doesn't even start until you start taking somebody else through this. And then it clicked with me that there was a reason why working with another alcoholic is so paramount in this process of Alcoholics Anonymous. What happens is it gives me this opportunity to re-experience the steps in a different way. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, is when I really learn something when I try to teach somebody else something. So it's one thing for me to like fake my way through it like I've done with everything else in my life. But it was a totally different thing for me to sit down with somebody else and go through the book. And so that's an experience that please do not miss. First and foremost, get involved in AA, study the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and then talk with somebody and work through the steps. That's what has gotten me sober and kept me sober through good times and bad. And so, like, tons of great experiences in the past over 20 years of sobriety. Like I said, met Megan, we got married, we had 4 great kids, 3 of them at one time. We had triplets. And so, yeah, right, like, I'm a real alcoholic. I've never done one of anything. And so, like, we have these great, amazing kids. And to this point, and this is the beautiful thing, is they've never seen me drink, and they never have to. All I have to do is I made a decision at that 3rd step, and this is really, it's just a true gift. I don't deserve sobriety. It's truly a gift, and all I had to do was make this decision in the 3rd step to follow through with the rest of the steps. I think I probably talked for more than I'm supposed to. This is a great opportunity. Thank you so much, and I love hearing from you guys.
Thanks, Neil.
Thank you.
Thanks, Neil.